far as information. Oh, here we go. We're recording. Got it. So, I didn't want to bring a repeat of everything that is on two other lectures on overwintering that are on our website. And if you don't have the website, you can just Google Cornell Spat and the Spat program, and all of the meetings and all the lectures are all online. And there are two on overwintering. There's a list of overwintering tips for everybody. But you know what I found over the years is that, and maybe it's because it hasn't been particularly cold the last couple of years, people don't have to do an awful lot to secure their stocks for the winter. Oysters are very, very amenable to cold. So an oyster has a antifreeze glycoprotein in its blood that keeps it from freezing solid. So theoretically, an oyster can be almost frozen solid. And what'll happen is that the antifreeze in the blood shunts energy to the heart, the kidney, and it doesn't freeze, and it allows it to hibernate, which is what it does in the winter. It doesn't have to feed, doesn't particularly have to breathe. You know, up in Cape Cod, and I'll never forget the day I went up to Cape Cod to Wellfleet to ground truth this notion that I had heard that up in Cape Cod, the oyster growers would take all of their oysters off of the grounds, move them into containers upland for the entire winter. And I pulled up to the shore of Wellfleet, and there was a guy named Chopper. He's very well known up in Cape Cod because he wins all the shucking contests, and he's a real bay person and a Wellfleet oyster grower. And I introduced myself, and I said, "Hey, I run a program, and I just wanted to ask you a question about winterizing." And he just looks at me before I asked the question. He said, "It's true," just like that. And sure enough, I went up a couple months later, and I saw Chopper driving down the road in his pickup truck. It looked like the Beverly Hillbillies, full of oyster cages and oysters, and he was moving them to his container upland because the water's so shallow in Wellfleet that when the ice comes in, it'll take everything away. It'll just scour everything away, the oysters, the gear. So they just put them up in containers. I'm pretty sure that they keep the containers from getting too cold. So there's a thermostat in there that might keep them at 40 or something like that, 30, 38 or something. So they're not in a freezer. They're in literally one of these containers, and they leave them out of the water for 3 months, from all of December, all of January, all of February, probably all of March, and then start putting them back. So they're out 3-4 months without water, without food. They're just hibernating. And which is kind of fascinating that a creature can withstand, a creature that lives in the water can withstand. But it's because they've got their own environment locked up in their shell. They just close that shell tight and hopefully don't open up trying to figure out if they can breathe or not. This kind of is something that you could think about when you're putting oysters in your refrigerator. Everyone's always asking me, how long can I keep oysters in my refrigerator? And I always have a really bad answer for that, which is, well, the ones in my refrigerator have been there for like a month. That's, for somebody who works on the water, you would think that I would take oysters out the day I wanted to eat them, and I would eat them. I wouldn't just say, oh, well, I'll get to them tomorrow. And a month goes by and they're still in my refrigerator. But what I found about that is that if you harvest oysters in the summer, so you're pulling them out of warm water and you're going to put them in the refrigerator, then they're not going to last as long in your refrigerator as if you had pulled them out in the winter time and put them in the refrigerator, because they're already chilled down and they're already kind of cool and closing up. So when you put them in the refrigerator, it's just an extension of them hibernating. In the summer, they're going to peek open to see what's going on as they're cooling down. And a lot of times their liquid will spill out into the bowl that you put them in. That's why we always say, put them cup side down, so that if they open up, they might keep that fluid longer. So in an oyster shell, or in a nutshell, oysters are remarkably resilient to cold. They actually, to tell you the truth, you might see, and you might have seen this year with your oysters, that you have these beautiful big oysters, and let's say you had 100 in your cage, and they overwintered fine. Everything was alive. And then you start losing maybe 10 of them a month or whatnot. And that could be dermo, because oysters don't like a warm winter. The dermo is an oyster disease that is pretty much could be theoretically in all of our oysters. Okay, it came from the Chesapeake about 40 years ago. They're still dealing with dermo in a big way. We have dermo in our oysters, but they're not as prone to dying, mass die off, as they are down south. And one reason is because a lot of times we have a cold winter. When a warm winter comes along, the dermo pressure can be greater. And so you might start seeing, the manifestation is that you're seeing, 10 of these beautiful oysters. You just looked at them last week, and now of the 100, 5 or 10 of them might be dead, and they're open and there's nothing in the shell. That could be dermo. So we like a cold winter. A nice cold set for these oysters. They will tend to come out of the winter very successfully. I would say, however, though, dermo usually hits an oyster that's overwintered 2 years. So I highly recommend you eating as many oysters as you can. And we keep going through, what size oyster you can eat. People are always surprised at how small an oyster can be to be an edible oyster. And again, this year we were growing 8 and 9 and 10-month-old oysters that were just fine to eat. We had a great growing year this year. So, oh, and by the way, feel free to unmute yourself and ask questions if during any of this. This is being very informal tonight. I just wanted to kind of touch base with everyone. It's been a long season and a long year, and we kind of haven't been doing these Zooms as much, or so I just wanted to kind of touch base with everybody, let you know that we've got you covered for the winter. If you have any issues, if you need any gear, if you need any assistance, you've got my email. You've got my phone number. Usually everyone's calling me on Sunday at 6 o'clock in the morning, waking me up and saying, oh, about my oysters, which is fine. I'm on 24/7. I'm Dr. Oyster for you guys. I'm on 24/7. So we're going to take care of any questions anybody has about overwintering. But the disclaimer, it's not even a disclaimer. The good news is it's really not that difficult. There's a couple things that you have to do. One of them being that you must secure your stuff well, very well. If you're growing at your own dock, if you're growing at your own place, and you're growing them floating off of your dock, or you've sunk them to the bottom, or whatever you've done, you must make sure that they're tied off well. And right there can be a problem for some people. We know the expression, if you can't tie a knot, tie a lot. Well, go for it. If you can't tie a knot, tie a lot, okay? I don't have to untie it for you. You have to untie it. But I will say, a problem people have with attaching their oysters for the winter. And the reason why I say now is the time you got to pay attention, because from December to probably beginning of April, you're not going to want to go out in the water and deal with anything that's going on. You've got to do it when it's safe to work in the water, where you feel comfortable in the water. And then you're going to have to leave them alone, because you're not going out in the middle of a gale in February because your oysters look like they're going to break free. If they look like they're going to break free and they break free, so be it. Don't risk yourself getting frostbite to save a bag of oysters. But do it well anytime now. Between, you know, Thanksgiving, things are going, by the way, oysters are going to keep growing probably into December. You know, there's a lot of good algae right now. They're growing like gangbusters right now. So when you go to overwinter them, it doesn't mean that you're putting them to sleep. You're putting your mind to sleep on what you have to do to get these things ready for the winter. People have been coming to the Marine Center. Can I overwinter now? A lot of people are in overwinter mode as soon as they put their floats on the top of these cages, except for connecting them to the line. So let me get back to that for a minute. A couple problems that I've seen throughout a couple of years is relying on those little stainless pins if they're not the right pins. We've been making our own pins for pinning them on lines, and they're of very mixed qualities, okay? Only because we were trying to figure out what gauge of stainless steel spring wire we were going to make these pins out of, and some of them were way too light, so they can pop open. That's no good. What can you do to avoid that? Well, there's a couple things you can do. If you're going to use cable ties are not all built the same by a long shot. All of the colorful ones are nice and colorful, and they're really brittle. And come winter time, they're not going to withstand getting cold. They'll break. You need a good hardy, if you're going to cable tie them, which I don't really recommend, by the way. If you're at the Marine Center, it's okay. At the Marine Center, we never get a lot of wave action or any kind of storm action. We do get ice, but the ice has never really bothered anything there. I've seen 8 inches of ice at the Marine Center, and we've never had a problem with oysters and the ice, except if you had them on, we used to have them on the bottom, and the ice would literally crush all of the gear. The oysters were fine, but you know, I had metal cages in the past, and the ice would just crush it into a pancake. So nothing's on the bottom right now that could be crushed by ice. The reason why we put the floats on the top is so if the ice comes into the creek, it'll lock onto the floats, and the floats will be in ice going up and down, but the oysters will always be below the ice. And that would be fine. If they're on the side, you might have noticed that these cages are very buoyant, and sometimes it almost looks like they're hovering over the water. Well, I'm leery for the day that a good set of ice comes in to any place, including your docks, and actually forms inside the cage with the oysters, because then the whole thing can freeze. You know, then those oysters might be able to freeze solid in ice, and that'll kill them. They don't want, I mean, the reason why I say, by the way, with that oysters have an antifreeze glycoprotein and all this stuff. And I've cracked open an oyster in December from the water, eaten it, opened it, and it was an oystersicle. It had ice in it. It was frozen, but it wasn't dead, because when the tide comes up over it, that it's very cold water, but it's still warmer than below freezing. Kimmy's harvesting. There's Kimmy. Everyone say hi to Kimmy. She's harvesting. Oh, Cherry,
Hi.
this is the weirdest season. We're getting a gallon a day of cherry.
Oh, look at that.
Every day. Look at this. Look at this. There's a whole.
Oh my gosh.
See what you just picked. That's today. I mean, it's like winter might be coming, but boy, we got.
Sorry to interrupt, guys. Just wanted to say hello to everybody.
Hello, everybody. Kimmy's retiring in 2 months, and she's going to become a spat. No, don't tell anyone. All right, I won't tell anyone. Anyway, so what I was going to say is that oysters, if they're left in the wintertime out of the water on the shoreline, they're probably going to die. Okay. That's not temperature control. That can be freezing. If they're if oysters were over evolutionary time, were conditioned to withstand freezing cold water, as long as it went over them every tidal cycle, then that is a form of insulation in a way. That's what thaws them back out. And some of them might, in shallow water, might freeze solid, and they probably won't live. So, it's not that they're impervious to freezing. They can, if you freeze an oyster, if it was so simple, we would put our oysters in the freezer and just pull them out and thaw them out, and they'd be alive. That's not how it's going to work. And by the way, I've never tried freezing oysters and thawing them out and then cooking them. I have a feeling that it probably would do something to the structure of the oyster that would make it maybe less palatable. But I don't know if anyone out there has ever tried that. Either shucked oysters, put them in a little Tupperware and put them in the freezer and thaw them out to make a stew later. It's probably doable. I just have never done that. So, again, when you're securing your oysters for the winter, the cable ties are probably, in my opinion, not the best way. If you're at your own dock and you get a lot of wave action, don't zip tie a rope to the cage. What I like doing is running the rope. And again, this is in this, I give an actual demonstration of how to rig up these on the Zoom where I have all the props. I didn't do it again because it was really hard to film. I was like practically standing on my head trying to get to the camera to figure out how to film what I was doing for these props. So, but basically I take the rigging, the rope, first if you can burn the end so it doesn't frazzle while you're putting it all the way through the cage mesh. If it's a small mesh cage, you might have to pop a couple little holes to get the rope through. But if you pass it all the way through the cage and you tie it off that way, I tell you, if you lost that, you probably lost a piece of your dock too, because it's very hard to rip the entire rope through the cage mesh. Whereas a cable tie, that can break, the pins can pop. So if you're going for extreme socking it home, rig it up with and if you need rigging, I have plenty of pot warp. If you want to have some stuff rigged, we can do that. I'm a big fan of rigging. I've never been able to teach anybody a knot. I think in the video, I try to teach people a knot. It's like there's 7 knots that everyone should know. If you don't know them at this point in your life, you're probably going to, have to struggle with figuring out Ashley's book of knots and all of its little twists and how to tie a bowline. But if you want to come by the Marine Center, we can always attempt to teach you how to tie a couple knots. But again, if you can't tie a knot, just keep tying a lot. and you can deal with untying it. That's why I like learning how to tie a knot, because if you tie a proper knot, to untie it. When I was doing, by the way, I don't. There's some people I see Gary Irwin's here. He's from Tiana. I see probably a couple other. Maggie is from Tiana. I see who else is from Tiana. There's a couple.
Can I actually ask you a question?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. I just put your oysters away. Yes.
Oh, thank you.
Welcome. You did a great job, by the way.
I was very upset when I thought I lost one, but I guess
We have that one for you. So
thank you.
They're all together. They're unfortunately, they're not together. They're in two spots. So when I go to get your oysters, I have to find the one I did in the net and the one I put your two cages left them in the cages because they were so clean and so perfect and so well labeled. I just did all that.
So when
but
we
they're not
come
together,
by
so they're lonely. They're saying, "Where's my cousins?" And they're over there. You'll get everything back. But go ahead and ask your question then.
So when we tie them up, like, when are we supposed to? I know you said now is the time now, and maybe in the next few weeks. But like, what do we tie them up to at the Marine Center? Like, and when do we show up to do it? Just anytime?
No, you're done. Everyone at Tiana is done.
Oh, we're done.
Put away in alphabetical order. I did all now, the reason why, Maggie, perfect segue. Okay, perfect segue, Maggie, because here's why. We had 100 growers at Tiana. I had to move everybody. Gary Bavosa is the last one. He's coming over tomorrow with his stuff. Anybody else that's at Tiana, they wanted it to be left there for little lunch boxes or whatnot. Everything else got moved back and put in alphabetical order. And I did it myself because I know what chaos is like come spring of bringing everybody's stuff back. So I know where everything is, and I tied them all off, and I know how to tie a knot. So when I go to untie them, it's really simple. And I'm telling you, this might sound really mean or whatnot, but I can absolutely tell when somebody doesn't know how to tie a knot when I go to untie their thing. And it drives me crazy because I worked on a square rigger. If there was a knot like that on a square rigger, you were probably going to die in a squall over it, trying to untie it. Or no, well, there's another thing that I learned when I was on the square rigger. And it's that you never want to cut a line if you have to cut a line. Line, it's rope, but when it's rigging, it's a line. And to cut a line is like sacrilege. It's so precious. Rope is an amazing, amazing tool. And I have huge respect for rope and rigging and lines. So when I see a knot that has been under pressure, that is what we call in the industry a knife knot, it's because you can't untie it. You can't undo it. It's been put under tension. And a bowline, you can tow a battleship with a bowline and untie it because it's got what's called the camel. And I can teach everybody this stuff, maybe. I could never figure out Ashley's Book of Knots. It's got like 10,000 knots, and there's all these little diagrams and arrows, and I could never figure out which one was going where. But I can show people the 7 knots you need to learn, which is a bowline, a round turn with 2 half hitches, a figure 8 or stopper knot, clove hitch, sheet bend, double sheet bend, and there's another one, whatever it is. I'd have to think about it, and I'm not thinking about it now. But trust me, they're great knots. A rolling hitch, great knot. And then you can get fancy. You can learn how to do Turk's heads and all this cool stuff. But you know, a round turn and 2 half hitches is one of the most useful knots in the world. As is a stopper knot, because you can do all your rigging with just a stopper knot. So I can show everybody this. It's on the video, the other video. If I've really piqued your interest and now you're mad at me because I didn't bring my little rope, I probably have some rope around here, but I wouldn't bore you with it right now. But So I go out to get everybody's stuff from Tiana, and I tied it all together. It's how I practice
you.
my rig. Oh, no, I don't thank me. I do it because I have to maintain some level of sanity during this move, which is really insane to move 100. I mean, that's theoretically 100,000 oysters in well over 100 cages, because everyone's got like 2 and 3 and all this stuff. And a lot of people were very helpful this year. I learned an interesting lesson when the town told me that they were pulling the docks a month early, and it kind of blew my mind. But we got 66 people off that day. Talk about scaring the living hell out of everybody. Everyone came out and they did it. What I didn't really mention, or it was left out, somehow strategically, was they were pulling the docks. They weren't pulling any of the lines or any of the oysters. They were just making it hard for me, because I like people to be able to put them in lanternets and hang them on a buoy line off the dock, which you walk over to the dock. And once the dock's gone, I had to do everything else in a canoe, which is very entertaining, by the way. If you ever want to be entertained on next year on a Tuesday, just come by after they pull the docks and watch me in a canoe wrestling with all these oysters, standing up and falling over. And, that's always quite challenging to do a lot of this stuff in a canoe when it's really blowing wind. But as a heads up to everybody, I will bet you that the town will always pull the docks the first week of October now. Everybody figures that climate change has changed all of our lives, for the rest of eternity. And I'm fine with that. But the town didn't want to deal with the weather. And we actually did. This was our best year at Tiana ever, as far as things coming ashore, people labeling. I could go on and on and on about labeling and attaching to lines. And we are definitely making headway, because whatever came ashore, except for about 4 of them, maybe 7 of them, everything was labeled. And ones that aren't labeled, I bring them back to the Marine Center and I label them unknown. And when the people come by and say, did you get my oysters? And by the way, don't try to pull anything over me. If there's not an orange tag in there, or a marker or something to tag it, and you say, and I ask you, well, did you label it? And you say, I think so. That means you didn't. Trust me, it means you didn't. Because I wouldn't even ask you if you had left orange tape to me, by the way, just to let you know of how young I feel at heart. Yeah, my wife is laughing. She probably knows what I'm going to say. Every time I open up an oyster cage and there's a little orange tag in there and I reach inside to read the magic name, it's like a kid at a birthday party, for God's sake, with a little grab bag. And for me, it's a hallelujah moment, because I know whose oysters they are, and it makes me feel good. I don't like anybody losing their oysters. And the reason why I don't is I know I'll give anybody oysters, but they don't want my oysters. They want the oysters that they grew. They're like pets, even if you're going to eat your pet. I mean, that's a weird thought. But they're your oysters. You grew them. You want your oysters. You don't want ones that made up for your lost oysters. You want your oysters. And on that other note, see, I meander a lot, and you have to live with me. This is how I am. I'm a meanderer. I could sing the Wanderer song. That's my plankton song, the Wanderer. But I'm not going to sing. Yeah. Oh, by the way, Saturday at Peconic Brewery, Saturday, 3 o'clock, Chuck and Jive will be playing. And I could get him to sing the Wanderer for you, Dave. I can't sing. Meryl will attest to that. She probably heard me sing at one of these things. But what I was going to say while I was meandering is, with the labeling and whatnot, if you don't tend your, this is something that I've been dealing with for a long time. I dealt with it yesterday, as a matter of fact. And as I was dealing with it, I was very saddened by it, which is the fact that if you don't tend your oysters, you know, I take care of your oysters. I move your oysters, I tie them up, I bring them here, I bring them there, but I after that, I don't tend them. So if you don't get your oysters, or you don't tend them, or you didn't tend them all season, don't expect them to do well. I pulled a bag yesterday of somebody who hasn't been to the Marine Center in a long time. I pulled the oysters up, full bag of oysters, and there were 3 alive out of maybe 300. They were all dead. They need love. It's the strangest thing. I don't know if they need love, but they need defouling, or they need something. You can't, it's a little strange that there's such high mortality in just not tending them, but it's the truth. And, you know, I don't want to say the other way, that you need to, like some Spat members that seem to tend their oysters like every other day with a toothbrush and a little, you know, little stencil kit for naming them. And they look great, but that's a little, what's that word? Obsessive compulsive? Yeah, I mean, there's a fine line, and one of the lines is not leaving them for 4 months, 6 months. It just doesn't work. And so if you were wondering where your oysters were from last year because you never got back to them, they're in a shell pile, and I'm sorry, and I'll give you some of my oysters, but they're not your oysters because yours died. So I commend everybody this season. I'm shocked at how well people did. I know it because it's a lot more work for me. They weigh a lot more. The survival was, Maggie's still, I see her name still in front of me. She did, new member, I believe you're a new member, did fabulously well. I mean, it doesn't look like anything died. You could eat, you know, a bunch of them, and they were born on Valentine's Day. So that means today's that's 8 months. February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October. That's 8 months. They're 8 months old, and they're 3 inches, 2.5 inches with a cup. That's crazy. But it turns out to not be crazy for a couple reasons. One being, and if you're wondering about this, and I had a Tiana member's son do a study this year on the Marine Center water, Tiana water, same oysters, growth rate, water quality sampling. He's hoping to get into MIT, so I hope he gets in. They won't know what he's talking about at MIT when he's talking about oysters anyway, so maybe he'll get in. But what makes an oyster grow faster in one place than another? Well, there's a thing called ceston flux. I won't bore you, but it's basically saying the flow of the water and the algae that's in the water will promote growth. So whenever you have faster flowing water and good algae concentration, you're going to get beautiful oysters. Tiana and Shinnecock and that whole area is pretty remarkable. I actually grew oysters for when I say myself, it means for us. I'm communal. Okay, I didn't grow oysters for me. I grew oysters for us. For the first time, I grew oysters for us, and I grew 20 or 30,000 at Tiana and at Goose Creek, and they just blew my mind how beautiful they are. So we should be having good parties, and there's oysters going around. And I will let you know that of those oysters, I'll go through and I'll pick out, and we already have, we've put them aside. This year's oysters, 8 months old, born on Valentine's Day, 2023. 40 of them are set aside for February 1st, 2024 spawn. And then we'll do a Valentine's Day spawn, and people are welcome. I think we're going to have a hoedown at Valentine's Day at the Marine Center, big hatchery. We should get balloons this year, chocolates, or, do stuff. But why? Because we're trying to determine if we can improve on the genetic strains for fast growth by using particularly large members of that cohort, because you'll know from your own oysters that some of them are giant compared to other ones that still look weeny. And it's got to be a genetic component. And so we're trying to tease that out to get more and more to be larger at a young life. And I think we're making headway, because I've never seen in my day an 8-month-old oyster that was not only edible, but busting out of the shell. And what would be a New York oyster for $3 is our 8 and 10-month oyster. So, and then the second year oysters are even more fabulous, because they're quite dense and cuppy and beautiful. So everyone's doing a great job. Getting back to, I've meandered so far that we're almost through winter and we haven't even put the stuff away. But we talked a little bit about rigging well. If you feel that you can't handle growing at your own dock, because you know that there's a lot of wave action, or pulling the floating dock, or the bottom's muddy and you can't do it, if you need to park them at the Marine Center, you can do that. We do that for some people. If you need other gear, we have some bottom gear. We've got some trays that you can use. There are things you can do to secure your stock. So attachment, it was really important, keeping them so that they're going to be submersed by water at least every tidal cycle is fine. Should you pull them up and put them in your garage? I'm not going to promote that for us, because I don't want to hear people telling me that for whatever reason it didn't work. I wouldn't do it. I don't pull oysters and leave them out of the water for 3 months. And yeah, and not in my garage. Where would all the cars and motorcycles and bicycles and tools go if the oysters are in there? It would never fly. And I've got a very big garage. So, and my wife has a new car, and she takes up half of my 4-car garage so she won't bash into all the nice other things in there. But we've never really had, the biggest problem we've had with anybody overwintering their oysters is that they lose. So, if you don't feel secure about securing your oysters, bring them over and we'll either rig you up your rig, because I can do that. I can take your oysters and put them in something and in such a way that you can definitely put them wherever you want and they won't take off. And I'll give you a guarantee on that, because if they're lost, you won't get your oysters back, but you will get new oysters. But we can do that. And so any other way of losing them? It's funny. I said I wouldn't put them out of the water for the winter, but I had one Spat member one year who came up to me and he said, "Oh, I'm such an idiot. All my oysters went ashore." This was at the Marine Center in what we call the back 40, which we used to have people growing in a back creek, pretty, around the corner. Hardly anybody grew there, but he had his stuff there. And apparently during a big storm, it all went up on the shore. And he's like, "Oh, my stuff went up on the shore. It's all dead. I can't believe it. I'm so stupid. I didn't do this. I didn't do what you told me." It's like, it's okay. It's okay. It's okay. And about 2 months later, I was going out the creek in the boat, and I look over in the shore, and they're still on the shore. He never went back, and actually, he never went back. He just saw that they were on the shore and said they're all dead. I went over to them, and they were bleach white, but they were all alive. And they'd been out of the water for months in the winter, months and months. And I called them up and I said, "Those are the best oysters you ever grew, you knucklehead." But I still don't recommend that everybody just throws them up on the shoreline and comes back in in April. But so losing them, because oysters don't die in the water in the winter. They just don't. They do just fine. There's no predation to speak of. It's just a matter of them somehow being disattached and washing away or something like that. And if you do have a problem, let me know, because I'd like to know. I've never seen, when we overwinter oysters, for instance, the ones from Diana, we never have, any of them particularly die. Maybe a couple, but it's not like they're all dead because it was winter. That doesn't happen. So you don't have to worry too much about that. But here's another thing I will say. And again, a lot of this is half-baked theories, which I'm full of. If you're going to want to harvest oysters in the winter, then set yourself up what we call a lunchbox, something that you can access apart from all your other stock, your biggest stuff that you're going to pull out when you want to harvest it in the winter, so that you don't disrupt the rest of the stock. And the reason why I say it's a half-baked theory is I go by what I call the hibernating bear theory. Oh, that's hard to say. Hibernating bear theory, which is there's a bear that's hibernating in a cave. And you go into the cave and you whack it on the head with a bat. And it kind of like, and it starts to come awake a little bit, and then you leave, and it goes back to hibernating. And you do that every day. I think in this bear theory that one of two things is going to happen. One, the bear's going to wake up and rip your lungs out. Or two, the bear's going to die because you keep making it expend its reserve sugars that it's maintained for hibernating when it's not going to eat all winter, and it runs out of energy and it dies. It's possible that you could do that with your oysters. If they're hibernating, you don't want to bring them up and wrestle them around and maybe even heat them up a little bit because they're now out of this really cold water. So you leave them alone untouched, and you harvest the ones that you want to eat. And that's always worked very well. Plus, it saves you having to open up a bunch of quiet in there. I have interlopers coming in. I'm on a Zoom lecture, which I totally, by the way, Darcy, thank you for reminding me. I was so preoccupied. It's like, you're 6 minutes late and we got 26 participants. Oops. Oh, yeah.
I didn't nag you.
Well, I was so preoccupied that I'm glad I saw your text. And that's why I'm on this lousy camera and no microphone. I didn't set everything up. If I had set it all up beforehand, like I always do, I would never have forgotten. But
We can hear you very well, though. You sound good.
You still don't know about the old part.
Well, it just goes to show you that all this preparation is for nothing. So it's fine. I am thinking, however, of doing a podcast one day. I think all of this material, we've got the coolest group, because you guys get to hear all this weird stuff that nobody knows about, and it's kind of fascinating. I just got an email they made a movie with us in it. It's called Holding Back the Tide, and this person wants me to go to this screening in Manhattan in November. It's like, it's like an oyster love story. I can't for the life of me figure out what this movie's about, but we're in it because, it's a kind of a documentary about oysters in New York and aphrodisiacs and this and sexy this and that, and oyster from beginning to end. It's really quite funny. Thanks, mate.
Okay, no problem.
And I probably won't go to the screening. If anyone wants to go in my stead, you know as much as I do about any of this stuff, so you can just tell them what it's amazing, the misinformation. It's fabulous. That's why we have so much fun with this program, because for all the fact that I'm probably giving you a whole bunch of misinformation too, at least I make it sound real. No, it's all good. So there goes that meandering again. So what I was going to say about that is winterizing, you don't want to pull up a cage and empty it all out looking for the 4 big ones to eat for your holiday. And by the way, if you need, if you're totally out of oysters and you need a couple dozen oysters for the holidays, just look me up. We should have oysters for folks. If you're in your first year and you didn't grow any big enough and you need oysters, we should be able to take care of you. Plus, the oyster growers are starting to owe me a lot of favors, so we could figure that out. We can always work out a deal with the commercial guys for getting people bags of oysters cheaper, maybe too. So, what else can I tell? Are there any questions about what you're heading into that you're really concerned about and you're not sure what you're going to do? Because I'll open up the instead of me meandering, why don't we field some questions about any concerns about how you're going to deal with your overwintering? Because you must be at least one. And if there isn't, oh, and you got to unmute if you're going to come on, I guess. And if there are no questions, that's fabulous. The reason why it's fabulous is, and I'll reiterate this a million times, and this is what makes the Spat program, I'm finding out more and more, a very, very special program. We're available all the time. You know, we didn't do this program so that we trained you for a week and then left you on your own. And if you're saying to yourself, well, winter's coming, they must be shutting down for the winter. Winter's our busiest time because we're getting ready for the hatchery season. So, you know, I got to eat up a ton of vacation time, but Spat runs year round. And, you know, January, February, March, those are our busiest months because that's where we make all of this stuff. And if you want to learn how to do it, we're there every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, year round, 8 to noon. We'll be running the algae room, the hatchery, the nursery comes up. It's a very exciting time. And you know, community doesn't get to learn this stuff so hands-on anywhere else but at Spat, because that's how we rigged it. We have our own hatchery so that you can make all the mistakes that you want and you don't get chastised. Even if you put all of the larvae in fresh water. I don't think he's on here, I can say that. Yeah, John did that last year. They don't like fresh water, they're marine creatures. But other than that, you know, everyone's forgiven. I've killed many more shellfish than I'll ever keep alive. No doubt about it. So anybody with a question?
I just wanted to thank you. Ivan and I wanted to thank you for everyone's hard work, especially you, and everything that we've learned for the last 2 years. I don't have any questions about overwintering. I'm sure I will over the winter since we do have a small one cage left at Tiana. And then other than that, our condolences, Kim, to your family. And I wanted to just drop off the call now because I'm in a very noisy environment and I'm missing your great tidbits at the moment.
You've done 2 years of fabulous growing. I'm always shocked at the size of your oysters. So whatever you're doing, just keep doing it because they're fabulous.
Well, thank you. We look forward to the start of next season and enjoying our delicious oysters this this winter, the ones that we have. So
Excellent.
It's been fantastic. Thank you, Kim. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hey, Kim.
Yes, sir.
You mentioned you're the star of a fabulous video where you teach people to tie knots, etc. Is there any way that Darcy could send a link to that in an email?
Oh, she could, and she might, but I will make it very easy for you because if you've got a computer and you know how to use a search engine like Google, really all you need to do is type in CCE Spat and you will get our website, and on that website has all the lectures, all the everything. It's got my email, it's got everything, and I'm sure that she'd be willing to send out a link to everybody, but it's also kind of remarkably, the Darcy does all, I don't do anything anymore. Darcy does everything. She should be, she should be in charge and doing the Zoom because, yeah, and Kimmy's agreeing with me because, I don't even, I don't know if she's still there. She might have left already, but.
Oh, I'm here. I'm laughing.
You're laughing? Okay. Well, because I don't even have an email list. I mean, I just say, send this out and she sends it out and the emails are spectacular. The website's spectacular.
It really
And
is.
The website, our Spat website has a lot of information on it. It's got a lot of lectures. I don't know if they're any fun anymore to watch. But sometimes I watch them just because I can see what stage of my living room I was at the time. And I guess we're gonna continue to do them. I wasn't sure if people were still Zooming after COVID. By the way, I've got COVID. So, COVID never, I'm sitting here with COVID doing a Zoom talk. Is kind of bringing me back to the awful glory days of remote COVID years, and it hasn't completely gone away yet. We haven't figured out whether we're going to do live because the Marine Center is a different place when it comes to going in for lectures, but we'll see. But
Okay, hey, I got a great idea. Why don't you send Darcy into Manhattan for that film festival to collect the Oyster Oscar?
because Darcy is worse than I am as far as never wanting to leave, the island, let alone home. I mean, who wants to go to Manhattan? Oh, I shouldn't say that. Manhattan's wonderful. I think I'm getting my son. It's in the West Village, and my son lives in one of those East or West Village, so he might go and do it for me. But anyone who wants to go to this showing, it's at the IFC, which is
Yep.
I think Indie Film Center or something like that.
Yep.
And it's called Holding Back the Tide. And maybe we should, if anyone's in Manhattan on the, well, I tell you what, I will send a link out to that to promote it. I was never sure what it was really all about because, it's an indie film made by very progressive hipsters, and I don't think they understood a thing I said when they were here. I mean, it's not that I was saying, oh, well, this is a protantric hermaphrodite. Did you know that when it goes from a petavillager to a juvenile set, that it's a 250 micron, and the next day it's doubled in volume? I mean, I could say that, but that doesn't make good. It's not as good as Charlton Heston saying, this is the last tomato on earth. I don't know. I could have been a contender instead of a bum, which is what I am, a bum. See, I could have been an actor. I don't know. Anyway, I will send you a link to that. And I still don't think that you'll be able to tie a knot after you watch it. But what you need to do, if you want to learn how to tie a knot, there's 3 different things you can do. Go off to sea, go around Cape Horn and try to survive. That's one way. There's probably, YouTube. I'm amazed at what YouTube videos can do. I've repaired cars, I've fixed dishwashers. I probably could learn how to tie a new knot, like a 5-stranded what do they call that? The Turk's head, 5-stranded Turk's head. So maybe I'll do that tonight in my spare time. I'll call up a YouTube video and see how their knots are. But the truth of the matter is, if you come by the Marine Center or anybody that ties a knot, I can show you. See, this is what's funny is that I use knots every single day of my life. I swear to God, every day of my life, I do something with a piece of rope, a line, and a knot every single day. without fail. It's crazy. I mean, and that doesn't include tying your shoes, okay? Even though that's a double slip knot, which isn't a bad knot. I mean, it's a knot. It's a double slip knot. It's not as good as a bowline is a fundamentally important knot. And what I get a kick out of is, I mean, I can tie a bowline behind my back. I don't need to see what I'm doing because it's called the weaver's technique. You just have to know what it feels like in your hand. You don't have to see it. So we can get you to tie a bowline behind your back. And then you'll know that you can tie a bowline in any direction, standing on your head or hanging upside down from a tree. Because sometimes you might be hanging upside down from a tree and need to tie a bowline. I've done that. I've been on the top of a mast 130 feet in the sky overlooking Charlotte Amalia, St. Thomas, white leading the triadic stay on the schooner westward. And they sent me aloft with a bosun's chair and said, well, you've got to rig the bosun's chair to go across this triadic stay. And I'm 130 feet above the deck, and I have to figure out how to move along a wire line going from mast to mast in a bosun's chair. And if you don't know how to tie a knot, in that case, you can be in deep, deep trouble. I'm just reading a wooden boat magazine about going aloft and learning new things about all these safety knots and ways of going aloft alone or tended. And the beauty of the Spat program is that everything that we want to do can be taught, and there's plenty of time, and you should learn it all, because life is too short to not learn everything that you want to learn, including a knot. So there you go. And anybody else?
Hello, Kim.
Oh.
No, you go first. You go first.
No, Gary. That's Gary, right? Go ahead.
Oh no, this is Erwin.
Oh, Erwin. Oh.
Yeah, you know, I have the oyster in my dock since I think May. And well, now I was wondering what should I do with the winter, but you answered a lot of my questions. I just wondered, should I open them and sort them by size to be sure, like?
Okay, now you bring up an excellent question, and of course it's in the other video, which is really mean of me. I mean, it's like I'm not telling you anything because I'm expecting you all to go and watch the one that I tell everything about everything, go through the whole checklist, go through a number of other stuff. But here's the thing, because I really haven't done this. All I've done is kind of meander and give you little one-liners and stuff. It's been very unfulfilling as far as I'm concerned, and it's got to change. It's not going to change. Just go watch the other video. But I will.
Oh, I will.
No, don't go away. I'm going to answer your question, because in the other video, it would say, when you're going into winterizing your oysters, what you can do is, so now you've got all your oysters in front of you, and you're supposed to put them away for the winter so that you won't touch them for a bunch of months. Well, now's a good time to put them away properly. So one thing you can do is, you can't say to yourself, well, they're not going to grow that much in the winter, so I'll just stuff them all in one bag and then I'll get back to them. And don't do that. Worst thing you can do, I'll tell you why. Maybe they'll do fine stuffed in a bag. And by the way, some Tiana oysters that came across, they looked great, but they were so overloaded that I had to split them up because there were way too many in the bag. There was like 500 in the bag. So I made 250 and 250 in the bag. I made extra bags for people. I can tell when something is overloaded. Now, would it have done well in the winter? Maybe, but that's not the problem. The problem is spring. The oysters are going to want to grow and come alive and be active and want more space well before you want to go back in the water to get them. So now is a better time to sorting them by size does another thing for you. If you sort them by size, Now, when you put them back in the cage, even if you do it, and here's a scientific term, this is a true scientific term, even if you do it ibolometrically, which means that looks like enough, or you do it volumetrically, like taking a 3-liter bucket and putting 3 liters of this size and 3 liters of that size. Well, 3 liters of big ones is a lot less oysters than 3 liters of small ones, but volume-wise, it's the same volume. So that's a good way of doing it, sorting them by size, looking at how much gear you have, and splitting it up so that it's, well sorted out. And then you can rest confident that you're going to get back to them in the spring. They're going to grow. I'll tell you something. These last couple winters and the springs we've been having, oysters start growing in March. And the water's not particularly warm. It's not like you're getting your Speedo on and saying, hey, oysters, here I come. I'm jumping in. I'm not. I'm waiting at least another month, but the oysters aren't. And when you pull your oyster cages out, you'll see the new fingernail of growth. And it's like, wow, these things have been eating. And so better to get it tucked away in the winter and not worry about getting back to them so early that they need the space. Did that answer your question?
Yeah. And also, you gave me some of them. I think they were already bigger. So how big should be an oyster before I eat it? Because some may be.
Okay, well, listen. Here's how I look at it. I've witnessed for the last couple of years, and I've gone up to folks that are tending their oysters, and I'm constantly walking by saying, you better start eating those. You'd be surprised how good and how meaty a relatively like a 2-inch oyster with a cup on it. Open one up and look at it and eat it. And because if it's really small, I mean, if it's 1.5 inches and it looks really small, it's really small. If you're looking at it and you say, boy, that looks like it, I could eat that. You probably could eat that. And I would highly recommend, when you look at one and you say, boy, that sure looks like it's pretty big and I could probably eat that. Just open it up to prove to yourself that you could definitely eat that. My favorite oyster these days are these 8-month-old oysters because the shell's lily white. They're beautiful. They're busting out of their shell. They're not huge. We went to Goose Creek 2 weeks ago and pulled up nets that were abandoned during COVID. We pulled up these nets. They weighed about 300 pounds a piece. And I have oysters the size of my feet. I saved 36 dozen of them. Okay, so if you want to see what a oyster, like a 9-year-old oyster, the size of your foot. Now, would you eat that? I made an oyster stew out of before I set the 36 dozen of. I made an oyster stew with 3 dozen of them. I made a huge vat of stew and I thought, wow, this is going to last days. And it lasted a day and a half with the family out. And they were tremendous. Oysters don't get bad when they're small. There's just not so many of them. And try to eat on the half shell of an oyster the size of your foot. You got to be pretty bold. So, but they make great stew. You can cut them into 4 pieces and it's like 4 oysters.
Perfect.
Good?
Yes,
Try
thank
it
you,
out.
Kim.
Good.
And the very last, so I heard the Spat program is still open, so I could come by any Monday.
Any Monday, Wednesday, Friday, we never shut down. I mean, you might not see me. I'm looking at my calendar here of the days I have left. And boy, I got to start taking vacation. Well, my significant other will retire soon and we can actually go on some trips during the summer or something. But
Nice.
it's yes, come by any Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and the Spat people are always always there. The Spat program, the beauty of the Spat program is there's so much ownership with the community and the Spat people that I have a great team, and so there's always somebody there, and we have to because we grow all this stuff from scratch. That's a 7-day-a-week project in the winter. There's got to be 7 days a week. Somebody's got to feed something and blah, blah, blah. We have a great team. If you want to join as part of the team, because more hands make less time. And, I got this guy, Charlie, comes in 7 days a week. Well, that's not very fair, but he loves it. And he's apparently got no life. Are you there, Charlie? No, he's got a life. He loves it. So. Good.
I definitely will try to be more involved.
Yeah, come by anytime. We
want to learn more.
Involved. Yeah. Good.
Thank you, Kim. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else out there in Zoom world, Zoom land? If not, yes, no, going once, going twice.
Hey, Kim, wait, sorry.
Oh, Michelle.
Yeah, hi. I got some seedlings from you. I'm new to the program. I'm sort of kind of new, but I got some seedlings late from you in the beginning of October. I separated them and I put them into the 2 cages that I have.
Yeah.
And I kind of spread them out as much as I could. And I will drop them below the water by mid-November. I'm off the docks here at Cleves Point.
All right.
If
Okay.
they're okay like that, I'm gonna look at your videos. I just found them on the website. I'm trying to scroll through them. I just want to verify really quick that
Don't multitask lectures all at
No,
once.
I'm not. Yeah,
Finish
I
one of
can't.
it.
I can't. I'm not that talented.
Okay.
But
good.
I just want to make sure that my oysters will be okay the way I laid them out between the 2 cages. So you gave me about 950. I put 400 in one, 400 in the other, and whatever.
How come I didn't give you 1,000? I give you 9.
No, I came out to like 940 or whatever. I don't know.
I owe you. Okay.
No, that's all
Put
right.
that I'll put that on your tab. Yeah.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah.
So I just want to
No,
verify.
it sounds like you're doing just fine. And
Okay.
just
Okay.
heed my warning about attachment. That's all.
Yes, I know, because I did do 1 cage. I used zip ties to tie the rope through it. Tomorrow I'll take it out and I'm
Yeah,
gonna tie the rope through it.
I totally don't.
Yeah, no.
like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I know. I'll take it out and I'll put the rope through it.
And if you need a hand, just bring all the stuff over. We could tumble it, we could wash it, we could clean it. Whatever you want, we could rig it up. I always enjoy you guys' company. So.
Okay, no problem. Thank you, Kim.
They're good. That goes for everybody. I enjoy everybody's company. As long as you don't come right at noon. Okay. We start very early. I get there at like 6:30 in the morning and get a bunch of stuff done. So good. Anybody else out there?
Kim, I just wanted to say thank you. It was really a lot of fun. This is Suzanne. And I was a new person at Tiana this year, and it was a highlight of the week. I really had fun learning about stuff with you guys and growing the oysters. It was a great time. So thank you.
Well, we had a great time with you, and it gets better actually. Because because what newcomers think that they're new at this, and they are, but everybody is. It doesn't take very long to get comfortable with the routine. And the more comfortable you get with it, what ends up happening is the more you help the newcomers. And it's really, then it becomes just a big family, and it is a lot of fun. And I appreciate that.
Well, thank you very much.
Good. Good. Everyone's ready for dinner? Thank you again, Darcy, for giving me a heads up. Next time, give me a heads up like 5 minutes early. That was bad.
Oh, sorry.
It was just like, oh my gosh! I think I was playing something to my son here.
No worries. Thank you so much, Kim. Good night, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Kim. Good night.
Thank you, Kim.
Thank you.
Okay.